I'm really excited to be here on a variety of levels, not the least of which is I don't get to often talk to a lot of developers, and I'm really excited to talk about this. The conversation I want to have today really builds off some of the stuff that Dylan was saying earlier this morning, and it's about leveraging the tools that we have today to make the right decisions about what technology we want to use, how we want to use it, what impact it needs to have on the people that we are building it for. So let's get started. We brought the team together, DevOps, right? That's great. And it's really been a transformational change in the nature of software development, right? It's redefined the meaning of teamwork. It's redefined how we get software into customers' hands. And it's also fundamentally shifted the way that we think about software development, and even more importantly, the way that we think about product development, because the software that we build is ultimately part of a product, right? It's allowed us to get bits into customers' hands faster. It's allowed us to recover from those mistakes a lot faster. But getting bits into customers' hands faster, while certainly a good thing, it's only the start. What it's actually done for us, the ability, this new DevOps capability that we've been growing and I'm seeing included in more and more organizations around the world, is that it's changed the way that our customers consume our products. We have new consumption patterns. We have new development methods. We have new conversations that are now possible with our audience, the people who buy and use our products. And it's opened up a new set of possibilities to force us to rethink how we build software products today. The conversation used to be about getting those bits out the door, right? We shipped it. We're done, right? Nope. Shipping is just the beginning of the conversation these days, and the definition of done needs to be rethought. Getting the bits out the door used to mean done. Getting the bits out the door today is simply the beginning of the conversation. Now, the hard part of product development begins, right? Now, the optimization has to start, the learning and the iteration, right? Done no longer equals shipping. Instead, the question that we need to ask is, so what, right? Right? It's still early, right? So what? You shipped it, right? Did people buy more stuff from us? Did they tell their friends about our product? Did they complete a task faster? Did they get a raise at work? Did they get to their kid's soccer game at the end of the day on time? Right, so what? Just because we shipped it doesn't mean it was a good idea. Did we actually make our customers and our users more successful, right? Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, you can ship all the features that you want, and they can still suck, right? Too soon? It's about 30 years, right? Look, this is how we used to talk to our customers when it came to software product development, right? Periodic, release-based outreach. You'd build something, you'd ship it, you'd wait for the installation to take place, and then at some point after the installation of the product itself, you'd do some kind of research. Did people use it? What did they use? What did they like? What did they didn't like? And then you would respond to that. Right? That's certainly where my career began. I used to work at AOL more than a dozen years ago, and we shipped you all those disks in the mail. Sorry. Right? I was certainly responsible for a part of that. And, we'd work for 6 months and get those disks out in the mail and wait for that to happen, for the installation to happen before we understood whether or not we built something that actually mattered to customers. But our world today means that continuous deployment equals continuous conversation. We can now get ideas into customers' hands as quickly as we want. And because of that, we can very quickly analyze whether or not that actually impacted them in a meaningful way. So we ship an idea, and we take as much or as little time as we want to get that idea into our users' and customers' hands. We can then sense, using the same technology, whether or not customer behavior has changed based on that idea. And then the most important piece is to actually be able to respond to what we sense. Was it a good idea? Did it change customer behavior in a meaningful way? Terrific. Let's iterate. Let's optimize. Let's scale it up. If it didn't, let's roll it back, rethink why it didn't work, and then do that again. And as you get through this loop continuously, you start to build a regular conversation, both an implicit one as well as an explicit one with the people who are using the products that you're developing. And every time you get through this loop, you course correct, right? You adjust towards a more accurate version, a better version, a more optimized version of the system that you're actually building. Now, to get these ideas adopted inside the organization, it's tough. The tactical changes, just investing in the infrastructure itself is not enough. There have to be organizational shifts to take place at all levels, at the top, at the team level, at the product level, to help these ideas take root. At the top of the organization, the culture of the company has to change, and I recognize that that's a broad and perhaps a bold statement, right? But the nature of the change has to move from a culture of a deliberate culture, which is where most of the companies that I interact with function. A deliberate culture says, we understand our customers, we know our market, we know the answer. We know what shape it'll take, we know what it will look like, we know how it'll work, we know who will buy it, we know who will use it, go build it. Here are all the specifications, right? And that is that industrial era model that we've taken into software development that assumes that we know all the answers up front. Instead, the change we have to move towards is an emergent mindset. One that says, we have a pretty good idea, a good guess about what will actually work for our customers based on what we know. And we're going to put some ideas into market quickly. And then based on the impact, right, on sensing the impact that product, that idea has on the market, we are going to iterate and respond and let the best ideas emerge and optimize those ideas and move those forward. And if you can get the company to start thinking in an emergent mindset, then it starts to change the nature of the way that your teams work as well. Teams need to shift how they work as well. The DevOps movement is an inspiration, frankly, to start bringing disparate practices, disciplines together in an effective way. The same thing needs to happen across the board. Building collaborative cross-functional teams that include not just engineering and DevOps, but product design, product management, marketing, etc. Working on the same project at the same time. Building these self-sufficient teams that can do whatever they need to do to get the job done. And most importantly, that they're empowered to make the decisions that they need to make to move the product forward, to iterate it forward. Because it's not enough to give people access to continuous deployment tools and analytics and the ability to get ideas into market faster. They have to be actually empowered to use them as well. The people that are closest to the work have the best set of information about how to react to the feedback that's coming back as they push these bits of code into customers' hands. And at the same time, the onus lies on that team to be as transparent as possible about what they're doing and how it's working. Right? It has to be a safe place to experiment. It has to be safe to iterate inside your organization. So people don't have to hide behind their monitors until they feel like the work is finished before they present it. Let's get ideas, let's understand the impact of those ideas, and let's move that forward. And at the product level, what that means is that we start to value learning over delivery. Right? We start to change the way that we think about what success looks like for our organization. And instead of just getting features out the door, we want to focus on building a continuous learning cycle. That ship, sense, and respond loop builds a continuous feedback loop with the market. And that starts to bring in a whole new set of information and data that you can use to determine what to do next with your product. And all those ideas that you're shipping, sensing, and responding are low investment and they're low risk. And as we figure out which ideas emerge as the winners, we increase the value of those ideas through optimization of features, of technology, and of designs. Think about it this way. In a continuous world, there is no end state to software. Right? It's this mythical state of perfection that we're constantly pursuing. Now, I want you to think about as an organization, as a company, as an individual, taking a position of humility. Right? That emergent mindset is underscored by a position of humility. And what I mean by that is that between you and that mythical end state of the product that you're working on, there's a fog. And you can only see, if you think about a fog, right, you can only see 2 or 3 steps into a fog. A deliberate mindset says, well, I'm just going to pick a direction and just go. Assume that this is the right direction and hope I don't fall off a cliff, right? An emergent mindset says, I think I should go in this direction, but I'm going to take 2 steps in that direction, right? A small deployment, an iteration, a sprint, whatever you want to call it. And when I get through those 2 steps, I'm going to sense what's changed around me. And then based on that new information, I'm going to respond. And if the information says, keep going, terrific, we're going to keep going. But if the information says, I shouldn't continue down this path, there's a cliff over there, then you have to change course. And that's by far the hardest thing to do in any of these situations, is that as you're collecting all this information, you're getting ideas in the market, new ideas are coming in, new ideas are emerging, old ideas are getting invalidated. You have to be the one that raises their hand and say, listen, we shouldn't go in this direction anymore. And that's very, very difficult. Now, the interesting thing is that this position of humility creates agility. Right? Because you're never sure, you're never terribly confident of the direction that you're heading in, it's easier to change course. And it creates this organizational agility, which drives organizational responsiveness. Responsiveness means that you can change no matter what's coming at you. Hey, that didn't work? Terrific, we'll try something else. Oh, wow, people love that? Let's scale that out, and let's work on that. In other words, if you're responsive, you can always be this guy in any situation. No matter what's going on around you, you're that guy, right? Always be that guy. But that's what the position of humility says. It says, I'll figure it out. It's okay. I aspire to be that guy. So, 3 things. How do you make this a reality? 3 changes that you need to make to start thinking about it in your company, in your team, in your product, to make this way of thinking a reality. How do you proceed? 3 things. First of all, change people's motivation. Change people's motivation from feature-focused incentives to customer-focused incentives. Right? Did we change customer behavior? Not did we ship more stuff. You heard Dylan talk about it earlier, right? It's not about getting more technology out into people's hands. It's getting the right technology in the right framework, in the right design, and then measuring to see if we change people's behavior. In other words, did we change the outcome? A measurable change in customer behavior. That's the first and foremost thing, right? People behave a certain way. And when you launch new products, it changes the way that they behave. You guys know what this is? This picture of? This is how people queue in Southeast Asia. They put their shoes in line because they don't want to stand in line, right? You can change people's behavior and you can measure whether or not they do things differently. And that is the definition of success. That is the definition of done. And if you set your incentive structures around task completion, success rates, return visit rates, right? Increase in usage rates, we can measure that. That's your new success criteria. Now, along the way, as you're doing that ship, sense, and respond loop, you're collecting evidence. And as part of that evidence, you can start to make a series of objective decisions about what to do next. Not just what features to work on, but what projects and efforts you actually want to fund. Many of you are probably going through your annual planning process right now. Right? Which is generally a fairly broken process, right? We try to predict the future and we say, next year we'll work on the iPhone app and it'll cost $5 million, right? Instead, think about it this way. Take an initiative, a customer-centered initiative. Next year we want to increase task completion rates by 50%. And I'm still going to give you $1 million to do that next year. But we're going to dole out that funding in quarterly increments. So as the team is shipping ideas, sensing whether or not they're changing customer behavior, and then responding, they're collecting evidence. And at the end of that initial funding cycle, let's just say it's a quarter, the team has to get up in front of the organization and say, we've been working on increasing task completion rates by 50%. We've spent $250,000. Here's what we've achieved, right? They could say, listen, we hit 50%. We're done. What do you want to do next? We have $750,000 left, right? They could say, hey, you know what? We're never going to hit 50%. We should deploy this money somewhere else. Here's why. Here's the evidence to do that. More likely than not, the team's going to come back and say, we moved the needle to 18%. Do you want us to keep going? Should we still go towards 50? Here's the evidence. Here's what we've learned. And here's what we'll do next if you give us another quarter's worth of funding. This allows both the team and the organization to use that evidence to determine what to fund and what not to fund. Now, the last change to think about is that if you're incentivizing your teams to change customer behavior and they're collecting all this evidence, then the way that we task them is we give them a problem to solve. We don't give them a solution to implement. Our goal is to let people come up, the teams themselves, determine which solutions actually solve these problems and in what manifestation of those solutions will yield the best result. But our goal is to give people that problem to solve. Hey, you know what? People are coming to the site once and they're never coming back. Right? Or they use the tool for a month and then we never see them again for another year. How do we get them to come back more often? Right? And by providing teams the autonomy and the empowerment to come up with their own ideas, they build better products because they're much more passionate about implementing their own solutions than ones that you handed down for them to think about. At the end, I want you to think about work this way, right? Process, my friend Jeff Patton likes to say, process is a reflection of culture. But the process that you use can actually drive the culture as well. And so if you're thinking about it this way, think about shifting your culture from one focused on delivery and leveraging the tools and technologies that you all work on to build a culture of learning. Thanks very much.